Eleanor Roosevelt, a member of the board of directors of the NAACP, as the world was roiling and reeling from the ravages of Nazism and militarism and deep divides of racism and xenophobia, she declared in that moment, "This is no ordinary time." This is no ordinary time, even as we look across the length and breadth of our country. And we're beginning to bridge the social distances brought about as a consequence of this pandemic. In this season of commencements and graduations, many advocates and activists and artists and academics yet declare this is no ordinary time. Our country is beset. Our country is yet facing pandemics of police brutality, pandemics of COVID-19, pandemics of voter suppression. This is no ordinary time. And yet in this moment, we have convened this Academy of Citizen Activism. Such a convening is predicated on a resilient hope. Such a convening is predicated on a deep, profound belief in the power of people to come together to bring about change in our time. This convening was predicated, it was premised on the belief that we can achieve our country, and in so doing, in the words of James Baldwin, change our world. We came together at a very difficult moment and certainly no ordinary time. But if it can be said that this is no ordinary time, it might be said that this is an extraordinary moment for advocacy, an extraordinary moment for activism, an extraordinary moment for us to put our bodies on the line, for us to put our conscience before us, before a moment for which or in which we can demonstrate courage and conviction. This is the time that we set aside to glean the best in terms of insights and scholarship and the eloquence of example in terms of the witness of our practitioners and activists. We heard over the course of the last 2 days some of the most powerful voices from the academy, from the streets, from Native American reservations, from the ballot box, from the stage, from the screen. We heard in the language of the arts, the language of economics, the language of law, the language of policy. We have heard in so many languages and at so many levels from so many generations. We yet believe that we are well positioned to literally change our country, achieve our country, and change the world. So in this moment, we'd like to believe that we are in the midst of a commencement. This is not a commencement in the traditional sense, a commencement that might be held in an ordinary time, in an unextraordinary moment, but a commencement in which no gowns will be worn, no caps will be worn, a commencement in which no degrees will be conferred, but a commencement in which we set forth, we step out, we begin anew to make a difference in our world. And so we reflect on those we've seen and those we've heard from, the class in which we study, the insights that we have extracted from one another's experience, and we go forth. We commence to do this work and to do it anew. And so I challenge you, I ask of you that you partner with the Trotter Collaborative. That is to say, those of you who lead organizations, who have social justice challenges, public policy challenges, legal challenges, think about partnering with the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice in this moment as we put together classes here at the Harvard Kennedy School, where our students work with faculty, work with staff, work with grassroots organization, just government all across this country to address some of the most nettlesome challenges before our democracy. So we ask that you think about partnering with us, reach out to us in terms of creating the kind of collaboration that makes a difference in people's lives and in the lives of our communities. We ask also that you support the work that we do. By support, what we mean is to study with us, to stand in solidarity with us. And yes, for those who are so able, foundations, institutions, certainly corporations, and individuals, if you can support the work, please do so. We also ask in this moment that with moral humility, we continue to study together. What we know all too well, and as Professor Sullivan and so many have lifted up over the course of the last 2 days, is that protests and demonstrations are necessary, but not sufficient. We have to protest, we have to demonstrate, we have to put our bodies on the line, we have to demonstrate a certain bodily integrity in terms of the credibility of our witness, but we also have to appreciate the fact that our work is done both on the streets, but also in the library. So I encourage you to literally follow the work of the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice. We encourage you to participate in future events. We ask that you help us think about how we might create new chapters in this Academy of Citizen Activism. And lastly, we challenge you as we challenge ourselves to appreciate the fact that as difficult as this hour is, it represents a tragic opportunity to do some of our best work. We're reminded that a high school student wrote to a 30-year-old asking that older activists speak to some of the injustices being witnessed by the high school activists. This young activist went to visit his would-be mentor. His mentor mentored him. He grew into a mature activist, went on to lead a very distinguished career, and ultimately was conferred an honorary degree by Harvard University. John Robert Lewis was mentored by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. That mentorship, that friendship is a metaphor for what we must do in this moment, which is to say that we must build intergenerational movements. We must build movements that are predicated on a multilingual, multivalent, multi-generational advocacy. That friendship is a metaphor for what we must do in this moment, in that John Lewis was not merely content to receive an honorary degree from Harvard University, but literally, as he wrestled and grappled with the ravages of stage 4 cancer, he took it upon himself, if you will, to officiate over a commencement for the next generation. Wrestling with stage 4 cancer, he stood on Black Lives Matter Plaza or Boulevard in Washington, D.C., holding a cane, wearing a mask in the middle of a pandemic, because he stood in solidarity. He stood in mentorship with the next generation. Not only that, John Lewis, having walked across the stage at Harvard, having stood on Black Lives Matter Plaza, he also literally from the grave supported the next generation of activists when the New York Times published a posthumous letter in which John Lewis charged the next generation. In other words, he gave a commencement charge to the next generation. You heard singers singing of his courage, singing of his witness on the graduation stage, on the commencement stage of Harvard University. I ask that in this moment, that you hear not merely those singers, but hear all of the students, all of the advocates, all of the activists, all of the leading figures of media, all of those who have convened with us over the course of these 2 days. Hear their voices and let their voices be for you a commencement charge to go forth and seek justice in our time. Thank you so much. Continue to support the work. We stand in solidarity with you. We ask that you stand in solidarity with us.